believe in you, believing that your teachers have your best interests at heart and are going to do whatever they can to teach you. So we notice that when students are made aware of these moments, but also can tell the stories of their experiences where people believe them, it begins an opportunity for us to give them skills that allow them to see that this isn't about them as much as it is about those who present these hostilities. And part of this also means alerting parents to these politics. When you talk about the notion of information stereotype, if teachers are struggling with stereotypes, we can also prepare teachers to be much more aware of both conscious and unconscious bias. Can you notice when you, for whatever reason, are favoring one person in the classroom over another? And that's not an easy task, but not all teachers are out to get kids, and we have to do more about those who are just not treating all children as human. But part of our job is to alert teachers about when bias is actually occurring that might harm students, particularly students of color. So there's a host of ways we do it, and a lot of it includes storytelling. It includes journaling. It includes using mindfulness to relax. It also includes being able to debate, stand up for yourself. We use a strategy called healthy racial comeback lines. Sometimes the children we're working with will tell us that they will get assaulted in between classes where somebody will make a statement about them or their humanity or their difference or the color of their skin, and they don't have a comeback. And they need a comeback for those moments to be able to stand up for themselves in a way that's not underreacting or overreacting. And that allows them to at least walk away not feeling so inferior. Hello?
I said, what are some of the racial comeback lines that you're referring to that are being used in some of these contexts?
Well, one of the things that happens when somebody perhaps calls you a name is that you often get paralyzed. So one of the challenges, why would a microaggression be a problem? Why would somebody making a statement to a person be a problem? Well, we ask students and adults when we teach them skills around racial literacy to track what effect did it have on you that somebody made a statement about you, like using the N-word, talking about your family. To some people, on a scale of 1 to 10, the stress level of a microaggression not that big a deal. So 1 or 2, and you ask them a day later, 2 days later, they've forgotten about it. But if you actually have somebody coming at you and you're feeling it like an 8, 9, or 10 at the moment it happens, like somebody hits you hard and you're angry about it, and then you're thinking about it a week later, that means that you have experienced something that could undermine your functioning, whether you're an adult or a student, and you may not be all present because you're bothered by that moment. So, a lot of the kids we talk to get called like the N-word, and so one example of a comeback line in one classroom, one young lady, teenager, was able to say, "Do you know the history of that word?" And begins to go for 2 minutes nonstop, giving a history of the N-word and challenging that moment in which someone has rejected her. And she was brilliant in doing it, but she had to practice, right? So one aspect of a healthy racial comeback line is you can't just say it off the top of your head. You have to practice. Some of us are better at this than others, but all folks need to practice. It can't be like you ever tell a joke where you forget the punchline and you're the only one that laughs, nobody else laughs with you. You've got to have a comeback line that is incisive, that gets to the point, might be culturally stylistic and rich, what we used to do growing up, playing the dozens or busting, but it can't be an underreaction or overreaction. It has to cut to the point. And some people will say, excuse me, which is a comeback in and of itself, which allows you time to think of something more cogent, but it's the key to a racial comeback line is that you're saying in that line, however you say it, with attitude or style, that I reject your rejection of me. I will not tolerate this moment. I will not tolerate this disrespect, and I'm going to say something, if it's only to myself, where I do not internalize this rejection. And sometimes we train students who say, I don't want to say it, but at least I'll believe it to myself. And other times we teach them, what would you want to say that represents you, your culture, your style, so you don't walk away feeling like you didn't stand up. And that's really where the crime, I think the trauma comes from microaggressions. People will worry over and over, I should have said something. I should have stood up for myself. I feel weak. And that's when you might decide to make a larger decision to retaliate, and that's not healthy.
Yeah, it's not healthy at all. And I've noticed that sometimes it seems that it's not just the words, because right now we're talking about those kind of things that people are saying that are word acting.
Right.
But even though we're in the 21st century, it even seems that even though we're in the 21st century, there are still people that still have those stereotypes about our youth, and they still react to that way. So I'm sure that some of your research deals with that as well, because I know you can still be I'm a fairly light complected gentleman, but you can be a dark complected gentleman and still get on the elevator on certain communities in like urban areas, in the rural areas, and there are still white women that will, retreat back or pull their purses tight and still have those kind of reactions that were definitely prominent in the 50s and beyond. But, we're in the 21st century, and there's still a lot of folks who still have those stereotypes out there and are afraid that these people are going to accost them or make some sort of aggressive move towards them, and so they get these kind of like very pent-in fears and they react that way. So I was wondering how you deal with that as a psychologist, both from the perspective of those white women that are having that reaction as well as our youth that are seeing that. Because, you can't be on a elevator or on a bus and not notice people having those kind of reactions to you. And I'm sure that's going to have some serious psychological impact on you.
Oh, yes, actually. And young people sometimes don't know what to make of those if they haven't been taught about issues of difference in race. We work with some boys in a discipline school, and one of the young men told a story about he and his friends. They were on the bus, and some of them were in our group, and one of our projects where we use basketball as a way to get at kids' emotions and around stress management. And he told a story in which he was on the Philadelphia bus, and he was trying to help a woman who was about to lose something out of her purse. And it was a white woman, and as he began to tell her, she reacted to him as if he was about to steal something and yelled at him as if he was, and screamed at the bus like he was robbing her. And his friends witnessed the whole thing, and they corroborated his story. And when we asked him how he felt, he couldn't tell us exactly how he felt. All he could say is, I wanted to kick her ass, basically. What he meant was, when we asked him more further, is that he was so upset, he was scared, that he was trying. And then when we talked to him, he wouldn't really wanted to hurt her. He just was so hurt himself that he was trying to help her. And the best that she could do, she misunderstood him, but she also reacted as if he was a criminal. And so he wasn't aware of the hurt at first. And part of our job is to help young people when they run into these moments to see it as, to see that hurt and to be okay with, that this isn't really about you. It's about their stereotyping and their misunderstanding of you. And so his anger was really not really about it was hurt underneath, and we practiced what he could say the next time about challenging her on this whole issue as well as other people on the bus. So, but students will tell us when they are aware too, when these moments happen, it's really hurt that gets to them. Why would somebody follow me in a store when I haven't done anything? Why is it that people will pull away from me? One of my good friends, and she's a principal of a local grassroots school called Jubilee School, Karen Falcon, called me up maybe 20 27 years ago, 28 years ago, because she said the boys, black boys in her school, had a question to her as a principal: why do people follow us in stores? Why do people walk across the street? And these were 5th and 6th graders asking her. So she called me up and to come and talk to the boys. And it really is human for you to wonder, why would somebody treat me as if I'm bad or something wrong with me? And in a child's mind, you know, sharing with them how the world doesn't always see them as human is painful, but it's absolutely, I think, necessary. And with love, young people could start to make the distinction between this is their problem, not mine.
And I imagine part of it is that you also have to train the people that are the guardians in these kind of situations. Like you just mentioned, your teacher friend, so I'm sure that she's aware of some of the things that she can do, like bringing you into the class. But then there are also people that are brought into these situations. I'm thinking about like the resource officers, which here in Durham oftentimes are sheriff officers. So they, of course, they come with like a whole police mindset. So they already have a mindset about what the youth are going to be like, because they're already dealing with them as from the criminal justice standpoint, and then they're coming in as resource officers. So they're probably bringing a lot of that bias that the police force has about these youth into their work with them on the school front, on the schoolyard. So I imagine that you probably talking to these folks have to tell them that, while you may be dealing with them on one level when you're out in the streets and maybe even arresting some of them or some of their peers, when you're in the school environment, that's a different environment. So you have to treat them in a different context than you would in their neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely. Those school resource officers, security guards in some of the schools can be very supportive or very detrimental to the emotional experiences of the students in schools. Some can be very mean and hateful, and students have told us that, for kids who are stressed out, these adults, can play a role in helping them or triggering them. And you're right on with that. And so folks in the school.
And I imagine also that another thing that these students have to deal with is also dealing with their peers of other cultures. Like we were talking about the older lady and things of that nature. But I imagine that some of these kids are also having friends or acquaintances that are from different ethnicities, so they're bringing their stereotypes in. And some of those stereotypes may be what they've seen off of the rap videos or off of the movies that they see that might be the images of our African-American youth. So they may also be bringing in certain preconceived notions that you probably have to help these kids cope with in terms of dealing with these peers of theirs that are already having some biases of their own and some stereotypes of their own and some preconceived notions that they're bringing into the whole picture.
Yes, absolutely. There was a school in Chicago in which I worked with the high schoolers around racial literacy work, and it was 3 days after a Republican primary in the fall of 2015, and in that primary they had just been talking about immigration, and a lot of negative, hostile, derogatory and stereotypical statements were made by the Republican nominees for president at that time. And when I got to the school, the first hour, the Mexican students particularly were crying. And they were crying because of that primaries, other students, white students from the school, were using racial epithets to dismiss them. And they had told me that they were used to the regular epithets. They were prepared for the general kinds of stereotypical statements that they had been hearing for years. But they were not prepared for the new ones that came from that primary that targeted their brothers, little brothers and sisters, their grandparents. And so the first hour we end up, just mourning the tears. The second hour we practiced some skills, and by the third hour, not only comeback lines, but students have prepared themselves for when they go through the hallways where a lot of this stuff occurs, or on the playgrounds or in the sports teams, where they hear this stuff to protect themselves. But to your point, peers as well they need to protect themselves in relationships and stand up for themselves.
Because one of the things I've noticed is that it seems like a lot of